Thank you, Mr President. I rise tonight to support the honourable member's motion. The opposition have time and time again called for a standalone child protection minister, someone who will be solely focused on vulnerable South Australian children and the child protection system, which is in crisis under this minister. But these calls have fallen on deaf ears. When the Premier had the opportunity at the recent cabinet reshuffle to ensure that there was a standalone child protection minister, the Premier instead appointed an assistant minister for junior sport participation, giving Minister Hilliard more support in her sports portfolio. This tells you all you need to know about this government's priorities, Mr President. So today I stand here again, like a broken record, calling for this portfolio to be given the attention that it needs and the attention that it deserves. The need for this change for a dedicated minister with a standalone portfolio is only personified by the minister's inaction in delivering the needed changes to the Children and Young People Safety Act. Mr President, this minister is failing to reach her own set targets. In the 2023 to 2024 budget, this budget right here, the minister may remember it. I'll provide the budget line to her here to jog her memory in case she's forgotten. Under targets for 2023 to 2024, it included the target to, and I quote, introduce amendments to support changes to the Children and Young People Safety Act 2017. Now, if we fast forward to this year's budget, 2024 to 2025, what do we see in here? Yes, we see to introduce changes to the Children and Young People Safety Act 2017. Mr President, this is entirely unacceptable. This minister has not delivered on her own self-imposed target. I'll add that this is not the only target that she has not met from the 2023-2024 budget too. The minister has been sitting on the final report for the review of this Act since February 2023. February 2023, not 2024, 2023. She's had over a year that she's been sitting on this report. What has this minister been focusing her time and her attention on? Because clearly she has not delivered on her own self-imposed KPI to deliver this crucial piece of legislation. Surely, this just displays that there is a real need for a standalone minister if she's not able to meet her own targets. But I guess, you know what? What's a failed target? Give the minister an assistant minister for her sports portfolio. I guess we can just add it to the failings of the Malinauskas government, shall we? After all, we're talking about a Labor government who promised to fix the ramping crisis and to vote Labor like your life depends on it because it just might. Well, you know what? The ramping crisis is far worse under your leadership. With the child protection system in crisis, you would think, you would hope, that the minister would prioritise this legislation and making tangible outcomes in this space. It should not take the crossbench. It should not take the opposition to call on this government to introduce legislation to amend the Children and Young People Safety Act, to prioritise the best interests of children and young people in South Australia. It should already be done. The minister knows what she needs to do. She knows this needs to be done. It's been a target for 2 out of 3 of the budgets that have been delivered by this government since they've been elected. I've met with many involved in this space, stakeholders, organisations, carers, family, and it has been absolutely heartbreaking to hear what is going on and the lack of support that they have told me that they have been provided with. I've heard some stories about carers relying on charities like Food Bank to ensure that children are fed. Why is this the case? It is entirely unacceptable. Carers are telling me it's a matter of financial support. We keep hearing about the cost of living crisis. We know that there are so many in our community that are feeling the pinch at the moment. Carers are no different. This government is not meeting them in the middle. And this year's budget measures are a clear example of a government who is not listening, and this ultimately is at the cost of vulnerable children. I believe that carers are doing their best, and we would be so lost without them, and I am incredibly grateful for the so many of them who have come to speak to me and to share their stories with me and spend countless hours advocating for changes for vulnerable South Australian children. So it's on the government to make sure that they fix this problem, that they find solutions, and that they deliver support for our carers. I've lost count of how many times they too have mentioned the great anticipation for this legislation and the much needed changes that come along with it. How many times they've spoken to me about the lack of support for carers, about the need for a standalone child protection minister, about the desire for an independent complaints process, about the desperate need for reform in this crucial space. Mr. President, some of the stories I have heard would break your heart. These children in care cannot afford to continuously be put on the back burner and wait for significant change. They need it now. It is my real hope that this minister does some soul searching and does some serious work in this space during the parliamentary break and comes back in August with this bill. The minister only has a full 7 scheduled sitting weeks left to deal with this bill. The time is on. South Australian children cannot wait. The minister cannot afford to either. Seeing as this government loves to focus on sport so much, perhaps I can put it this way, Mr. President. Minister, you've not even made it to the field yet. It's half time, and there's not a lot left to go.
Honourable